Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Brandon. Welcome to Audio Addiction, where you find latest album reviews. You can find our band interviews, and you can find other music-related content on the channel. I post 3 interviews a week at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as well as album reviews and backstage press and a few other notable series. So if you are unfamiliar with the channel, thank you for checking me out. Of course, it's always greatly appreciated. And if you like what you see, definitely subscribe. Hit that thumbs up, share it. It goes a long way. But tonight, we're going to be talking about Hollow Front's newest record, Loose Threads. So I want to give a shout out to Tyler, not only for coming on to do an interview, which I will leave a link to that if you are so interested in watching that. Basically, him and I went over the anthology of Hollow Front, some influences, things of that nature. So if you're interested in checking that, I'll leave a link for that. But he had sent me Still Life about 2 years ago to the date today, which is pretty insane. And so it feels kind of fitting that I am doing a review of their latest release, Loose Threads. I know it came out a couple weeks ago. I was a little bit more planned to do it because they were going to release it later, but they happened to release it earlier, so I try to do this as quickly as I could or felt comfortable doing. So I want to give a shout out to Tyler for sending this over, but I'm going to go through each track, give you my thoughts and opinions on it, go through some pros and cons, and then fish it out with an overall rating. So the first track off the record is called Afflicted. I really enjoy the cool electronic intro in this track. I think it reminds me a lot of Stranger Things, which is totally not a bad thing. I think the melody is kind of similar, not exactly the same, but it has that sort of quality to it. I think it's just, again, the sort of synth pad that they're using going on here. But I also really love Dakota's singing. I believe that he was not in the Still Life EP. It was kind of in between that and obviously this record. And I think he's a great addition to this band. He not only plays he plays all the guitar parts, but he also does some really great clean work and clean singing work, to be a little bit more clear. And I think just juxtaposed with Tyler, which again will go further on in tracks off this record, I think he does a great job of balancing him out as a vocalist. I also really appreciate, in terms of this song in particular, how he kind of keeps a similar melody to that of the electronic parts of this song. And as well as that, I think that just the overall attention to keeping that sort of similar melody throughout the entire record is really thoughtful and really cognitive, and I think it is really intelligent the way that they choose to go about that. I also appreciate, in terms of Dakota's vocals, that he adds a little bit of gravel to his voice. I think that's always a nice touch. I always appreciate when vocalists kind of like touch that little bit of edge of like rasp and things of that nature. It always makes it interesting to me. Tyler comes in at around the minute mark of the track and brings a lot, if not all, of the energy to the track. That's when the drums come in, that's when the bass comes in, that's when a lot of the more aggressive guitar parts come in, which is really nice. As I had referenced earlier, I like that they go back to the intro in the chorus. It's a nice callback, even though it wasn't too far away from the intro. I think that just kind of keeping that similar sort of melody ingrained in the track, things, at least to me, is very interesting, and I love when that happens. Something that I really appreciate, and something that stuck out to me when I've listened to this record probably like 50 times now, was the drumming from Devin. I thought his drumming, especially at the beginning portion and just throughout the entire track in general, was something that I came back to every time I was listening to this track. I would say more specifically in that second verse of the track, I think that's absolutely where he shines. And I think this is a really solid start to the record. Again, if you're familiar with Hollow Front, this should not seem too unfamiliar to you, but I think if you're a new fan and if you're checking out this band, this one is a great start, especially if you're listening to the record from start to finish. So we're going to move into track number 2, which is Nameless. I appreciate the darker undertones of this track. It's kind of a nice juxtaposition to Afflicted, which feels a little bit more melodic. It feels a little bit more vibey, a little bit more airy, and I like that. I think they took a better melodic approach with this one, and this one again has the melodic tendencies of this track, but I think it takes it in more of a darker tone, as I had mentioned literally a couple seconds ago. But I also really love that this shows off Tyler's screaming. I think that in Afflicted, he was a little bit more reserved, and in this track, I think he's definitely starting to come into his own. And I think the tracks that proceed, that follow this one, they're doozies, so we'll get into those in a few minutes. But I think his screams just have this like sort of like aggressive biting tonality to him, and that is something that I loved about the Still Life EP, and it's something that I really love about this record in particular. I think he's able to show off his full gamut as a vocalist, not only from the kind of low growls, but also to the really cutting highs that he has going on. I also like the welcome addition of piano as well. I think it brings in a lot of like Make Them Suffer sort of vibes, as well as an influence of theirs, which is Architects. I know that they include a lot of like piano and strings and things of that nature, and I think a track like this really highlights that sort of influence as well. I also think it aids a lot to the sort of darker tonalities of this track as well. So I think that, again, two pluses that I really enjoy about this. Another thing I really enjoy about this track is Dakota's voice as well. I think carrying from Afflicted to Nameless, I think he does a great job of transferring his cleans into that realm, as well as kind of being paired up with Tyler's screaming in the pre-chorus. I think that's really solid as well. There's a nice little breakdown at around the 2 minutes and 33 second mark to around the 3 minutes and 15 second mark. I definitely feel like this song highlights a lot of their strong metalcore roots. As I mentioned, I know Make Them Suffer really isn't a metalcore band, but I know that they have metalcore aspects to them. So I think that also brings out a lot of aspects of that, as well as Architects as a band I had mentioned earlier, and just some other influences. I feel like this is definitely one of Tyler's stronger vocal performances so far. And I think if you're a fan of the Still Life EP, I think you'll also dig this one a lot. I think there's a lot of crossover and transfer appeal from the EP to this. I know it's been a couple years, but overall, really dug this one too. So we're going to move into track number 3, which is Loose Threads. In this song, I really fell in love with Dakota's vocals. I know that he's kind of had like more of a backseat sort of role. I would say Afflicted and Loose Threads, I think primarily are the most songs that have the most cleans on it. Going further even too, I think these two tracks, as the tracks that I mentioned, have the most cleans in it, which is nice. I also find that he just has a great way of being melodically subtle in terms of the power of his voice. Like if you listen to that first verse, he just has this really nice way of being like really pristine with his vocals, and it just comes out super clear. But then it kind of does the inverse of that in the chorus. It just sounds super gritty. It sounds super powerful, super full. And I really love his dynamics as a clean vocalist, the way that he's kind of able to make it a little bit more soft, and where there isn't a lot of energy to it, he can kind of bring the energy level down in terms of that vocal level, but still keep it really interesting. But also to really, when the energy needs to come in and hit, he's able to be a powerful clean vocalist and sell it. So I thought that was really solid. The chorus has a huge sound to it, and again, Dakota's vocals really soar over it. I like dynamically how they switched it up as well. In the second verse, they become a little bit more aggressive, and I like that they're cognitive about how something should become more aggressive or more energetic after the first chorus. I thought that was stylistically a really good choice, and I think it really makes for this song to be one of my favorites off the record. I think song structure wise and the payoff of the song is absolutely worth it, and it feels to me in terms of the entire record the most cohesive, and ironically enough, it happens to be the namesake of the record. So I would say that this one, if I had to choose any song to recommend to anybody that has not heard of Hollow Front, I'd recommend this one, because it does encompass those sorts of clean values that I love, clean vocals, but also it really incentivizes people to check a little bit further with the like heavier vocals that Tyler does, especially in the second verse. I think he really sells that, but also Dakota does a great job of selling it clean. So overall, from start to finish, really enjoyed this track a lot, and again, it's probably my favorite track off the record. So we're moving to track number 4, which is Left Behind. I believe this was a single at one point. Obviously, all the singles and songs in general are out, but to my knowledge, I believe this was one of the singles. And the tuning of the song must be just like dummy thick. Like, it sounds huge. Like I think Lee Albrecht from Seraphim. I was blanking for a hot second, but I remembered it. I believe he did the production on it, and it just sounds awesome. So shouts to Lee, good job, man. But this one is a song that I feel like Tyler shines for sure. And there's a lot of other tracks off this record that I think he does a great job of his screaming prowess. But in terms of his range from kind of the like lower end to the like almost yelly sort of parts and things that I enjoyed from Still Life, I know I keep referencing it, but I think it's a good counterpoint to this whole record and how, you know, some of the things that I enjoyed about Still Life, you know, transfer over into this record, and it's cool to see that they've improved in that aspect in certain portions of this record in general. I really think that his screams hit that kind of low tuning that this song requires, and I like it. I also feel like he also hits those really high notes that really make this song shine in general, more specifically in the chorus, where he has kind of a Ryan Kirby-esque Sam Carter sort of sing yell part that I again enjoyed in Still Life and enjoyed in this track as well. The little string section in the chorus was a nice touch as well. There's a breakdown at the 1 minute and 54-second mark to around the 2 minutes and 10-second mark as well. And I like that the lead melody line was added in. I think that's a really nice addition as well. And if you want to talk about a big boy breakdown, that comes in at the 3 minutes and 20-second mark to the end of the track, and I think their drummer Devin absolutely goes in. If you didn't think I heard those blast beats, dog. Good job. I always love when I hear a metalcore band just add a little bit of blast beat flavor in there. You know, it's like adding a little salt, a little extra. You know, it just was a solid track. Again, if you're a fan of like Architects, if you're a fan of like the newest Fit record, I think you'll enjoy this track a lot for sure. So we're going to move into track number 5, which is Vagabond. You know you'll love a track when it starts off with that dirty bass line, courtesy of my common name, Brandon. I gotta give the shout outs to Brandon. You know, us Brandons gotta stick together. As cheesy as that just sounded right now, and now it's on the internet. So anyway, getting back to the track, I like that this one kind of hints at little aspects of like deathcore, hardcore, metalcore mixed throughout. I think they do a great job of incorporating different aspects from those sorts of genres into something that is obviously familiar to most people, especially in this sort of genre of music. I think that there's a lot of crossover appeal, especially if you're just into heavy music in general. You know, I think a great example of this track, and if I had to kind of compare it to any sort of band, it would be like Gideon. They're one of my favorite kind of like hardcore, metalcore hybrid sorts of bands. And I think they do a great job of kind of incorporating that sort of vibe, the Ghost Inside, similar sorts of bands that kind of mix hardcore, metalcore, a little bit of deathcore in there. I know Gideon and Ghost Inside don't, but you get my point. So I really enjoy that. And if you just want a track that will give you that angry, filthy, any other disgusting adjective you want to use to describe a mean stank face, then this is the track for you, especially at the 1 minute and 49-second mark to around the 2 minutes and 26-second mark. If that doesn't hit you like a ton of bricks, listen, I don't even know what to tell you, man. This track rocks. I really enjoy it. It is super disgustingly heavy. If you just want a track where you know you want a mosh pit in your apartment or your house, then this one is an absolute go-to. It's just super heavy, takes no prisoners, and again, Nothing too crazy, I guess, to write home about particularly. Or do I think it's like instrumentally insane? I think it's tight, like, but I don't think it's like groundbreaking in that sense. But it's not supposed to be. It's just a dumb, heavy track, and I love that. I just love when a band just kind of just does those dumb, sort of thick, heavy tracks. So definitely want to check out if you're into one of those heavier, kind of more hardcore side of metalcore. So we're gonna move into track number 6, which is Wishful Thinking. If for many of the reasons why you like the previous tracks that I had so eloquently talked about, then you'll really enjoy this one as well. This one is another really heavy one. Dakota's guitar work, I think, is really solid in this track. I think Brandon has more of a pronounced role in terms of like his bass playing, and I like that they rely on his bass work to kind of fill those sort of heavy dead spaces in the track, as well as just making those heavy notes just hit just a little bit harder. Speaking about hitting a little bit harder, the breakdown at the 3 minutes and 16-second mark to the end of the track, super heavy, really tight, really enjoyed it. Again, I don't really have any other critiques other than it's just a really just heavy track, and I think if you've enjoyed the heavy slew of tracks so far, then you'll enjoy this one as well. So we're going to move in track number 7, which is Falling Apart. I think after having a couple of just the really aggressive heavy tracks, it's been this track is a nice change of pace, and I think it just has a great way of keeping a good flow to it. I think this track is a heavy track, granted, but I will say that it has, like, it isn't heavy for the sake of being heavy. It's like heavy because it's playing in this sort of role of like, there's a little bit more of a rhythm to it. There's a little bit more of a flow to it. And I appreciate that. I think that I like that they're playing off more of the melodic aspects of it and not really taking away from the heavy aspect, because I know that they're just a heavy band and they're going to be that way. But I appreciate when they've used their opportunity to do a heavy track and choose to experiment. I think this track is a good example of that. The chorus is super solid. I like that it has the right amount of punch, but also accenting, again, the more melodic aspects of Hollow Front. And I think it's heavy in a more unique way than I think the previous tracks were. Like, again, they're just heavy for the sake of being heavy. This one's heavy, but I think it utilizes the way that the kind of the vocal rhythm goes, the instrumentation behind it all. It's just heavy in that aspect, but it doesn't necessarily it's just a straight breakdown. It just works with this, and I appreciate the kind of experimentation that they have going on with this. So we're going to move into track number 8, which is Panic. I think the way that they utilize cleans were really interesting. Again, this one is another heavy one, as I have been referencing this entire review, but I think the cleans is something that kind of struck me. This was probably one of the first tracks that I had heard from the new record, and the cleans really were something that I feel like at first I didn't like, and I'm still kind of on the fence about it. It's not necessarily bad, but it's just interesting. I think they use it more so in a kind of like reverby, echoey sort of thing, and it accents Tyler's screaming. But it's just interesting to me. I think it definitely has a strong influence of Architects. I know that was something Tyler and I discussed in the interview. And it does feel very Architects X, which isn't a bad thing. They're one of the best. I would say they're one of the best metalcore bands in the scene for sure. At least they're consistent, I would say. You can definitely hear those cues, especially taken in a song like this. And being one of the singles, I think that it also has a lot of weight behind it. And I think it fits pretty well in the overall track listing. I wouldn't say it's particularly bad. I wouldn't say it's good. I think it's just a really solid track. I like the breakdown at the 3 minutes and 10-second mark to the end of the track. I thought it was pretty heavy. I enjoyed it the first time I listened to it. I enjoyed it in this record so far in this format. And it's just a really solid, just heavy metalcore track. So if you love what Hollow Front's doing, then you'll enjoy this track a lot. So we're going to move into track number 9, which is Ghosted. And let me just tell you something. all of you thought that Left Behind was going to be a dummy thick track. And I did too, if I'm going to be straight. I really thought that was going to be the heaviest track off the record. Then they go out and they pull out Ghosted. And my God, I thought that, again, Left Behind was heavy. They just took it 2 steps lower. And this was just nuts heavy. I don't understand why they chose to do it, but I appreciate that they decided to do it that way. I think it's large in part with just Tyler's screaming range. I think he just absolutely murdered it in this track, and his range from kind of those really biting high screams, and then how they're like layered over each other is really solid. I love the harmonization between the screams. The like low registers sounds like really like deep in the chest. It sounds full. I love that. It really does make Wage Wars the River look like Child's Play. I know a lot of people reference that in terms of a great metalcore, heavy metalcore track with just screaming in it. But this one, I think, just took it on that next level. I mean, I would put these two side to side, and I would ask somebody that really enjoys metalcore which one you'd like better. And I mean, I don't know. I might be just a little bit biased, but I think this one just is a standout track to me. The instrumentals, again, while it's not like anything nuts, nothing new, nothing groundbreaking, it's just heavy. It's just really just nuts heavy. Like, I want to say, I just want to say how heavy it is, and it is. Tyler absolutely let it all on the table. And then especially at the 2-minute mark to the end of the track, that I'm just, the only adjective that I wrote on here to describe it as is holy shit. Like, it is that holy shit moment that you're just like, what's going on? Like, this is how it's gonna be. So I don't really have any other critiques other than that, just to let you know to just go check out Ghosted. And I need to know what your thoughts are on this, because it's just heavy. It's just, I can't, there's really no other way to describe it. It's just nuts heavy. And I hope you're doing better, Tyler. I mean, it just sounds like you got something on your shoulder, and I would hope that you're doing better. So if you made it to this far in this review, but we're gonna move into track number 10, which is The Itch. Again, from one heavy hitter to another. This one is another just dummy thick heavy track. Tyler continues to show off his prowess as a great vocalist, especially in the metalcore scene. I think he does a great job of just letting it all out. I think the one thing that I kind of made, like, not a stab at him, but just like a joke that I wrote on here, was just like, they just couldn't get all the anger out in one track, so they decided to split it into 2. And I feel like that's a pretty justified comment. I mean, Ghosted was heavy and just angry, like, lyrically, and this one feels exactly the same way, but just like a continuation of that, or like part 2 or whatever. Hollow Front just like must have a chip on their shoulder or something. I don't want to feel like I have to talk shit about it, but like, because I don't want to be like the subject of one of their next songs. But it's just again, much of the reason why I don't have a lot of commentary in terms of why I enjoy both Ghosted and The Itch is just because it's a heavy track that I really can't describe other than that is just heavy, angry, and pissed off. That is literally the amalgamation of all the things you can say about those 2 tracks. So we're gonna move into the last track number 11, which is Serendipity. I really dig the group vocals in the intro of the song. I wish they would have used it a little bit more. I know that there were some kind of hints of it throughout the entire record, but I would have loved to hear a little bit more of that. I also really enjoyed Dakota's guitar riffs in this track. I think he overall was kind of flying mostly under my radar. Like, I thought that all the instrumentation leading up to this point was really solid in terms of the guitars, but this one really stuck out to me the most, and I like that they released this as one of the last singles, because I think it does a great job of showing off what they're capable of as well, as much singles do. And I also appreciate the kind of dichotomy between Tyler's harsh vocals and Dakota's clean singing. I think it's just paired beautifully well together. I know that I had mentioned that a decent amount in a few of the previous tracks that have more clean singing in it, but I think it's worthy to note again, just because I think the dynamic between them two are really solid, and I'm curious to see how they grow going further. I also really enjoy, the screaming. I thought it was nice, but again, in this track from Tyler, but the dynamics was something that I felt like I needed, especially after having a good majority of this record just being mostly Tyler, which is not a problem. I just love the dichotomy between clean and unclean singing. Maybe it's just me and why I enjoy this genre, but I thought that they did a great job in kind of pairing those things. So overall, I thought it was a solid closing track, but nothing too like out of the ordinary if you're familiar with Hollow Front. So some pros and cons I have about this record. I think Tyler's screaming was absolutely on point, from not only range but tonality, to just ability to do what he does as a screamer. I think he really kind of ran the gambit. I also feel like he did a great job of showing off his range and register as a screamer. Anything from kind of the sort of Sam Carter, Ryan Kirby sort of yell parts, to really deep lows, to really biting highs. He really covers it all, and I'm curious to see how he ups himself in the next record, because he did a great job in that department. As I mentioned earlier, I think Dakota's singing is an absolutely great welcomed addition to this band and to this record in general. I think he offers a nice counterbalance to what Tyler does. While again, a good majority of this record is mostly Tyler, I think that a good, I would say it's maybe like 70-30. I think 70% is mostly just screaming from Tyler's end, and I think that Dakota does some singing. He might also do some screaming. I'm not entirely sure, but I know for a fact he does some clean singing. So I thought it was a nice addition. I hope that they expound upon it a little bit more as future releases come out. And I think instrumentation-wise, I think it was really solid. I think not only from Devin, their drummer, to Brandon, their bass player, to Dakota, their guitar player, I think they do a great job of, again, having those songs that are really heavy and instrumentation wise are really solid, but also branching out and doing some more melodic, a little bit more ambient, different sort of stuff off the record. I think that's what makes a lot of their instrumentation interesting. And again, I'm curious to see how they go further and what they're going to be doing next. So some cons, I would like to see some more diversity vocally. I would say more so between the dynamics of Tyler and Dakota. I really appreciated that throughout, I think 3 or 4 different tracks off this record that have a little bit more of that, like clean singing, unclean singing, clean singing, unclean singing, or some variation of that. And I would love to see more of that. I think that they were playing it a little bit safe, and I'd love to see them do more of a just having a song that's like all clean singing, or because they have songs that are all screaming, so it would be a nice change of pace. And it'd be interesting to see if maybe Tyler would kind of branch and do that sort of again, that Sam Carter sort of, Ryan Kirby sort of yell or sing. I think that would be very interesting. I also think that they need to experiment a little bit more. Again, I am a full advocate for just dummy thick heavy tracks. If you let me listen to one of those, I'm going to be putting that on my workout playlist, and I'm going to be listening to that. But I think as a reviewer, as a critique, I think that I'd love to hear some more experimentation. They had little glimpses here and there. I think Falling Apart is really well thought out. I think Loose Threads was also a really good one. Serendipity in certain parts was pretty interesting too, and I would love to see them experiment more, take a little bit more risk. I felt like this record was not the most groundbreaking record, but I also didn't think it was particularly bad. I think it was just pretty solid, but there wasn't anything that I was like, holy shit, this is different. There are some heavy tracks that I was just like, holy shit, because they're just heavy. But I'd love to hear some more diversifying and, you know, just kind of different modes to go around. I think that they have a solid foundation, and as I said, I'd love to see how they go further. I don't think that particularly makes or breaks this record, but I think overall I would love to see where they go going further. So my overall rating for Hollow Front's Loose Threads, I'm going to be giving it a 9.4 out of 10. I think it's really solid. If you are interested in metalcore, if you are interested in the bands that I had mentioned prior, like Architects, Make Them Suffer, I think there's a little bit of bits of like Wage War here and there too, you'll dig this band. I think that they have all of the great qualities of a metalcore band, and I'm just curious to see what they do next and how they choose to go further, because they have a lot of interesting thoughts. There was a lot of things off this record that I was like, yeah, I would love to see them kind of push the envelope a little bit more. And I'm, again, curious to see what they have next. If you are interested in checking out Loose Threads, I will leave links in the description where you can find out about the band, their music, the record. Also, if you'd like to check out the interview with Tyler, as I had mentioned earlier, I'll also leave a link to that. And if you enjoyed my review, make sure to hit that thumbs up, share it, like it, subscribe. Leave a comment below if you agree with my rating, if you agree with my critiques on it. If you don't, I'd love to know why you feel a certain way about it. If you feel differently, I'd love to hear your opinion. And hopefully we can kind of get an interesting conversation going. So as I mentioned, my name is Brandon. We have a bunch of new content coming on the channel. I am super excited to have it come out, and I'm excited to be streaming on Twitch very soon. So if you are interested in that, it's just audioaddictionmedia at twitch.tv. So go check it out. I'll hopefully be live streaming not this upcoming weekend, but probably the following weekend. And again, new stuff to come. Very stoked for all of you. Hope all of you have an awesome 4th of July. I imagine this will be coming out technically today, Wednesday. But if you live in the States, happy 4th of July. If you don't live in the States, I hope you guys have a good rest of the week / a weekend. As I mentioned, my name is Brandon. We hope you got your fix, and we'll be talking with you soon. Peace.